Now, underworld street gangs, the gunning down of innocent victims and civilians subjected to constant fear and intimidation. It could be a gritty gangster film. It's not. Barry Kennerk's book, Shadow of the Brotherhood, takes us back to the streets of Dublin in 1867, where political violence was the order of the day. He joins us down in studio to tell us more about the events behind the thrilling historical novel. You're very welcome, Barry. Thanks indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Aidan. Thanks very much for having me on.
It's set around the time the Fenian Uprising, or the first of them in 1867.
That's right.
Happened. The police, who were the police then?
Well, the police in Dublin were the Dublin Metropolitan Police. They were an unarmed force, like today's Gardaí, and like today's Gardaí, there were many parallels. They were police in very dangerous streets, little alleyways and so on, with truncheons. That's all they were armed with. In the countryside, you had the armed RIC, so it's a semi-militarised force. But in Dublin, it was pretty much like today.
All right, so it's fairly straightforward. And these were all local people then in the police force at the time, were they?
A lot of them came from rural backgrounds, labouring backgrounds on farms and so on, and had come into the DMP. It was a fairly egalitarian kind of force, so you could move your way up through the ranks fairly easily, you know, detective and so on. One of the most famous DMP men was John Mallon, who became Assistant Commissioner. As a Catholic, it was that was a huge thing for him to hold.
Big breakthrough. Yeah. Paint a little picture of Dublin at that time, because obviously it was hugely different. For instance, there was a lot of smoke and a lot of fog caused by people burning fuel to keep warm.
Absolutely. I mean, to set the scene and to set the scene of what happened on the night of this incident, Dublin in the 1860s had about 50 days of fog each winter, which I suppose in the era after smokeless coal is very hard for people to imagine now. But if you can imagine that mail vans would become lost on the way to the GPO, people would stumble into the canals, that kind of thing. It was chaotic, yeah. And it was into that kind of pea soup that a young constable, Patrick Keena, steps out on the beat from Chancery Lane Station. He walks down Parliament Street. Now, again, to set the scene, Dublin at night was, and particularly Temple Bar, where this incident happened, it was deserted at night, not like today. The horse-drawn trams were taken off the streets.
Finished at 9 o'clock at night or something, gone, everyone's out of the city.
Gone, yeah. And as Keena comes to the edge of the quay, he looks across to Essex Bridge, he spies a man on the battlements, and it was unusual to see somebody standing there, thinks that he might be up to something dodgy, and decides to follow him. Now, he's about to grab him, and the man wheels round, and there's a flash, a smell of sulphurous smoke. Keena doesn't know what's happened to him. It dawns on him he's been shot, and he cries out, "Bring me a priest." A cabbie who'd been around at the Dolphin Hotel in Essex Street runs down, thinks a house has fallen down. It's a shocking indictment of the state of the city's buildings, actually, that's what occurred to him. But I mean, 250,000 people in Dublin, half of them living in overcrowded tenements. So
and no street lights in some areas because they're just out of order, broken.
Gas lights were turned off at 1 in the morning. All the area around Stephen's Green, Merrion Row and so on, the gas lights in fact were broken. So it was a fairly dilapidated kind of place. Very easy to move around, flit in the shadows. Garrotting was fairly common. You know, you had all these kind of street crimes going on. Anyway, Keena's being shot. At the same time, a Sergeant Kelly, who'd come out from College Street Station, which is today's Pearse Street Station, that moved premises, he's come out on the beat to inspect the men, hears the shot and runs through Merchant's Arch, where he meets a constable called Morton. Now, both of these guys are over 6 foot tall, and they run down the quay, not being able to see a hand in front of their face hardly. But Kelly, who's not as fit as Morton is, and it later proves to be his undoing, stops at the corner of Eustace Street and turns into the junction there where Fitzsimons is today. And that's where he meets the gunman. He's also shot, and that's where the book basically takes off.
Okay. And researching this, where did you come across this tale?
Various different places, a lot of information in the National Archives, but I suppose what started me on the whole road on this was that I'd been researching my family history for about 10 years or so, and there was a suggestion in the family that an ancestor of mine was involved in this incident, you see. Now, I never found anything to prove that, but the real story overtook that, and I said, this is really interesting, and I had to find out what actually happened. And also the fact that it was a hidden history. Why was this brushed under the carpet? We've never heard about this story before. I mean, Keena's funeral had hundreds of police officers turned out on foot and mounted. the cortege was so long that as the end was coming over Connell Bridge, the head of it was still turning into today's Parnell Street.
So you think there would be some marker put down in history at the time?
Absolutely.
And like a statue or something. But was it because it wasn't really a crime in the sense that he wasn't investigating anything, just in the wrong place at the wrong time, perhaps?
Well, the two policemen were vilified by the nationalist press. I suppose nationalists were embarrassed about the idea that their men would be running around maybe shooting unarmed police officers. I should say also, of course, that it was attributed to a Fenian assassination circle, and that's another aspect of the book. Yeah.
And just even the term Fenian, I mean, that originated, I believe, in America, is that true?
Well, the Fenian Brotherhood was founded simultaneously in America and Dublin, in 1858. It was always the Fenian Brotherhood in America. They could be a lot more overt over there. There was more support for them. They didn't have to be as clandestine. In Dublin, it was the IRB, secretive, but founded simultaneously on Patrick's Day, 1858.
And the American chapter from Chicago, they seem to be allowed to run riot in Canada for a period of time.
That's right,
How did that happen? Now, the US just sort of say, OK, boys, off you go?
Well, you know, the funny thing about those raids, they had raids into Canada, 2 of them, in fact, and there's suggestion that it had the tacit support of the American president. So there was a kind of a nod and a wink of, you know, you go over the border, we'll provide the trains and so on, but don't say it was us who helped you, which is a remarkable thing, really. Yeah.
True crime fans are going to love this, as is anybody who has the slightest interest in history and the slightest interest in their own city and their own country. Obviously, you unravel the mystery as the book goes along. What else do we encounter across the chapters?
Well, the whole book culminates with the trial of a man called Patrick Lennon in February 1868. So really, the book, as the book takes off, it's about trying to crack this squad, but also, I think what's very important in this is the human story, because I think what we should recognise today is that nationalism is it's what we have today as a country. It's been hard won, and innocent people and civilians and so on were caught up in the crossfire. The 2 men were taken to Mercer's Hospital, so it was the medical notes of the 2 men that really brought the story alive. You just don't find that today. But to find a blow-by-blow account, Kelly, who was treated, imagine coming into a hospital, you have no radiology department, you have no modern medical techniques.
Probably.
No. And Kelly was held down by 2 orderlies, grabbed him by both arms, given a dose of brandy to steady his nerves.
Probably then,
This kind of stuff,
Incredible.
So it was the human story of what happened to these men, because young Keena, he was only in his mid-20s, and he was a sole support to his parents from Mullingar.
A raw recruit, in other words, on the beat.
That's it. And it was just to understand that these guys were actual real people, not just forces of the crown, and that's what I wanted to commemorate.
Good luck with it. Congratulations, by the way. It's book number 2.
Very much.
What are you doing next?
Well, I've just finished a little book now, which is on the history of the North Strand, and I'm working with the fundraising department in Temple Street, where I work. We've done a cover story for Ireland's Own on the hospital, over 130 years, serving the children of Ireland, so I'm looking forward to that too.
Well done. Barry, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much.